It was 1936. I was 8 years old. And my uncle said, oh, I was the only one who took from the family. We had a huge family. My father and his cousins and brothers was 7 of them, and with a number of children. But I was the oldest boy. So my eldest uncle, he was virtually a polymath. He could do almost everything. He said, come with me, we are going to pick up a guest. So we went to the Jamna River, took a motorboat, crossed from Allahabad to the opposite bank, and we waited there. So after 20 minutes or so, I asked him, what is going on? He said, look on your left. And I saw a little speck, black speck of an aeroplane. And this aeroplane gradually became bigger and bigger and bigger, came and landed on the water of the Jamna. Because there was no airfield in Allahabad in 1936. Promptly the boatman started the boat and we rushed to the aeroplane. The aeroplane door was open. The bottom of it was maybe 1 foot above the water. That's about all. Door was open. The gentleman we had come to meet picked up his suitcase and walked into our boat. So that was the pickup. So, but I got a chance to peep inside, and I looked at the, cockpit area. I said, I've got to drive one of these one day. I didn't know the drivers of aeroplane were called pilots. So I said, I got to drive one of these days. So I announced that I'm going to be a pilot. Now my uncle had also become president of the Hindu Provincial Flying Club, which was a bunch of clubs in UP. And he said, you write all, I was a calligraphist by then. So he said, you write all the invitations. So I wrote all the invitations. As a reward, I got 2 flights, didn't touch the controls. But I picked up the book of aerodynamics, the theory of flight, and studied it. This was when I was already in BSc. So when I went to the selection board, the chairman of the board asked me, you're interested in flying? I said, yes, sir. He says, do you know what an elevator does? I said, yes, it's a longitudinal control. What does the rudder do? I said, it's a lateral control. So he realized that I know what I'm talking about. He says, what about stalling? So I decided to attack back. I said, sir, there are 2 types of stall. Either a straight stall or a G stall. He said, forget it. Because it was out of his depth. So anyway, they selected me. And I went through the medical board, etc. Arrived in Coimbatore. This was on 18th of July 1948. And the first shock we got was immediately proceed to the barber. Every cadet used to have hair like Gaurav. Well, his hair is not as bad, but And they were trimmed off until they were only half an inch of the crew crop. And we were told, you maintain it or else you will do such a hard parade that you won't know what hit you. So anyway, we used to do that every single week. The hair used to be clipped off down to the half-inch level. And if you failed, you got what was called a pack parade. You wore your uniform, put on the backpack, into which was stuffed a blanket and a water bottle, and wearing boots. And then you had to crawl across the parade ground, which was all tarmac. And by the time you finished, you had blisters on your hands and knees. Luckily, I didn't go through a single one of them. I must have been over-disciplined. They used to call me young old man. This was when I was 20 years, not yet 20. But yeah, I was 20. And young old man. And the reason probably was that I was, even amongst the cadets, We were 2 or 3 graduates, but the rest of them were totally uneducated. And busy reading, studying, etc. And it became famous that I was walking around, somebody said, "Hey, Kapil, come here." So I go there. He said, "Just explain this to me." I explain it and walk away. He says, he knows these things before we studied the bloody thing. Because very frankly, they are so simple. Physics, chemistry, science, Newton's laws, all these things are just automatic and straightforward. When we arrived in Jodhpur, by the way, there was an examination in mathematics. 6 questions were compulsory, and there were 3 more. 2-hour paper. In 30 minutes, I had finished all 9 without worrying about the non-compulsory one. The teachers also had fun. When I looked at the marks, I had got 127 out of 100. Anyway, so I stood first in the ground subjects. I stood first in flying, but did not get the Sword of Honor. That required a leadership which I did not have. The one who had it was a chap called Sudhakaran from Madras University. And I have a lot more to say about him. He was absolutely a magnificent personality. And he was the one, as a pilot officer, received the standards from the president for the Air Force in a parade. That's a great honor as a pilot officer. So anyway, all this went on. But coming back to the period before joining, between 8 years old and 20 years old, first thing that happens is I had announced my intention. So my mother consulted some Pandit. He said, by the age of 18, your son is going to die in an air crash. As simple as that. So my mother said, no bloody flying for you. I said, no bloody Pandit for me. Only answer. Eventually, I was in intermediate in Jhansi, and a recruiting officer came. So I went and saw him, and he talked to me for a few minutes. And then he says, I think we can induct you in the Air Force. Fill up the form. I filled up the form. Then he sees my father's name, ICS, V. Bhargav, ICS, District and Session Judge of Jhansi. He says, I know your father. I met him at the club. I've lost to him in bridge. I am not going to take you on until I talk to him. So I got reported. So my father summoned me, also at the dining room. What's this, you want to join the Air Force? I said, yes, sir. He says, well, I got 4 sons. If one of them wants to join the Air Force, that's fine. But I have 2 conditions. You must complete your BSc and we must be independent.